Alright, today I'm going to expand this chicken coop. I picked this up at Tractor Supply and I put it together on another video linked here. Now that coop is kind of expensive, so I'm just going to use these materials. I've got a couple sheets of siding that I picked up. I've got some 1x2s that I'm going to use, and I've got some hardware cloth, and I've got this, I picked this up at Home Depot. This is livestock safe paint. Very cool. So we'll pre-paint before we put them together this time. What you doing, kitty? You? The first thing I did was make myself a drawing of the walls that I'm going to reproduce, and also the frames that I'm going to make to take place of the walls that are currently there. So I'm just going to make my cuts and make this first wall, which is the front. I use these 1x2s. This way I could roll out the hardware cloth right on top, and then the edges of the hardware cloth won't be exposed, which might cause damage to either us or the chickens. So I'm cutting the hardware cloth here with 10 snips, which worked pretty good for me. And then I'm able just to roll this hardware cloth right on top of the first part of the frames, and then put the second half right over the top to lock them down with some 1-inch staples. Getting this hardware cloth down is actually the hardest part of this. Once I've got it down, the staples don't seem to hold very well, so I'm gonna just re-support it all with some screws. So I just use some 1-inch screws and just go all the way around the edges, making these 1x2s sandwiched together. This way that hardware cloth has nowhere or no chance of moving. And there we go. There's our front panel. Now all I need to do is just paint it up so that it doesn't change shape. Right, now I'm going to move this panel on the side, and I'm going to copy the frame for this and put it inside. So I just laid it down, and I'm just going to use my speed square to get the angles that's currently there. Once I know the angle, and I think this was 20 degrees, then I can just cut it on my miter saw. So I just use my miter saw to replicate the angle. And I'm going to take these two pieces, these 1x2s, and then I'm going to sandwich them together and use a little bit of just wood glue. And this will help keep them strong because this is going to be the frame. And then I just join them together with staples. And this has worked very well so far. Now that I've got the frames put together, I'm going to assemble all the sides. And here we go, assembling the top. Now once I got it all assembled, I put it in and just tested to make sure it fit right, which it did. So I'm going to pull it out and get it painted. I'm going to use that same paint for all of it, the livestock safe paint. Once it's painted up, I'm install this frame. So I've got the roof and the side walls now supported, and I can remove the other wall. Now that I've got this wall off, I'm just going to copy this frame as well. And in the same manner that I did the last one, I'm just going to take the 1x2s and sandwich them together. I'm going to copy the angles and just screw it all together. And once I've got this frame put together, I just painted this one just like the last one and installed it in place. Now I installed the wall just like I removed the other one, so it's just a replication of the old wall, and this is going to support the walls and the roof. Now this center beam that goes across, I had to lift up. I put a little block on the end there just to raise it up, and that worked out pretty well because on the sidewall it actually fit into a little bracket. So this is just replicating that bracket. Here's my new back wall. Now I'm just going off the measurements that I had from the previous back wall and just assembling this just like I did the front wall, sandwiching that hardware cloth inside. Once this wall's all put together, I'm going to paint it and just install it right to the frame that I just installed on the side. So this is easy, just line it up with the bottom and just screw it right into place. Once I've got this wall installed, I just trim it out just to make sure that it fits right, because the lawn that I have it put on is uneven. So now I'm going to bring in that side wall I'd removed and attach it to that back wall. As you can see, I have to shim it out quite a bit because there's a very large slope that this is going onto. And once I've got it shimmed out, I just screw the two walls together and it's ready to be framed in. Okay, with the three walls in place, I'm going to put a frame around the sides, and this is where the floor is going to sit and where the panels for the side wall and also the panel for the roof is going to sit. Now on this roof panel where it meets the other roof, I suggest that you, if you're going to do this, put it onto the roof panel first and then put the roof panel in. And the reason being is it's really hard to reach underneath the other roof. So you'll see in a minute, I had to use framing nails to actually make it set in place. Alright, I measured all the panels. So this is going to be the floor, the front wall of the coop, and also the roof panels. So I measured them out, and I'm going to use a skill saw to cut out all the shapes, all the panel sizes. Now on the floor panel, I had to cut little corners just to fit in there for the frame. So I didn't show that, but I just used the skill saw to cut out these little grooves on the ends there. You can kind of see them right there. And I'm able to drop it right into place, and now I've got a floor. Alright, that's a nice floor for them, I think. It's going to be easy to just sweep that out right out of the back. You can see where the door is going to sit, so I can just take a broom and just brush it right out the back. Staple it in place so it's solid, and put my roof on. So you can see it's sliding in between the groove where I put the frame there. So it's going to be really hard to reach in there to staple that in place. But on the other side, I can just staple it in, not a problem, onto the frame I had installed there. And now you can see I used framing nails to reach all the way across. So it would have been a lot easier just to staple that to the roof first. Now on this front panel, I cut it a little short. That way there's an opening, a gap on the top. That way air can be ventilated through it. Now I just sealed up all the edges with construction adhesive, which worked really well. We actually just had a storm last night and no water got in there. So. Alright, this is as far as we got yesterday. So let's put on the rest of the walls today, paint it up, and we should be good to go. I gotta even out where the walls go in, but it looks like it's gonna be plenty of room. Alright, now I can put on these panels that I made. So this is that large panel I first made, and I'm just going to screw it right into the other frame that I had installed. And it's actually kind of hard to hold by yourself, but you can do it, not a problem. And I'm just using 2.5-inch screws to go right through and make sure that thing's solid. And here's the other panel that I'd taken off the side, and I'm reusing that panel that was the original panel from the manufacturer, and line it up to the new panel I made and set it into place. Now that I've got it set in place, I'm going to put it on the actual coop and put everything together here. Okay, that looks good now. I got to shim out the bottoms. So I'm going to cut a piece of 2x4 and use it as an angle, because you can see there's a large angle at the bottom of the frame there. So I'm going to use this and build it up. Awesome. Now figure out how I want this to set. Now that I've got it figured out, I just put together the blocks that I want to use for the bottom and paint them up. While I'm waiting for that to dry, I'm going to paint with my wife all the other surfaces. So there's the roof, and the inside and the sides, and now I can install the blocks now that they're dry. Now once those blocks are in place, I just use some 1-inch screws, the 2-inch screws, whatever it took to get them in place, and put that frame down the bottom. Now on the front edge of this, I trimmed it down with a hand planer just so it's flat all the way across. And you can see on the roof panels, I put on the frames first and then put the panels up. Now with the help of my wife, she's holding it in place while I staple the frames together, and this worked out really well. So the panels are pre-cut and they fit perfectly, and I didn't have any issues with that. Now once these panels are in place, I'm just going to go ahead and staple these right to the frames that I made. Easy peasy. And then I'm going to seal it up with some construction adhesive again. So I'm just running it right down the center, and then this is going to seal up the whole roof. Now that the roof is made, time to make a door. Now I've already cut the panels, so I'm just going to cut all these frame parts right off the size of the panel. So there, I'm just cutting them to size as I go, stapling them in place. Now for these little runners, I put in some construction adhesive because I'm going to flip it over to staple it in place. That way they're not moving around. The staples were a little bit long, so anything that was sticking out, I just hammered the ends down. And that way it's not going to end up hurting anything. Now on the inside of the coop, I put a little bar in the inside, a little piece of wood, just to make sure when the door is open, it doesn't fall on the chickens inward. Now when I removed that wall, that took away one of the nests, so there's only 2 nests now. So I'm going to build this little box to slide in there, which will give him another nest and possibly another 2 nests. So I'm not sure how many nests each one needs, but this is going to give them the opportunity to have all the nests they need if needed, plus it slides in and out nice and easy. And time to install a door. Now I just use these 1.5-inch hinges, attach them right to the door, and then I was able to hold up the door with my knee and attach the other hinge right to the frame. Easy peasy, and worked out pretty well. Now I installed door latches on both sides of this door to hold it in place and keep it closed. And it worked out very well, and I put in this makeshift nesting box, so if they need that nesting box, they have it. It worked out pretty well. Now I'm going to dig a barrier around the new area that I had installed. So since I got the chickens, we've noticed there's some rather large coyotes coming around the outside fence. So we want to make sure that if any of them happen to get inside, they're not able to dig their way to the chickens. So I dig out about 12 inches or so, and then just put some chicken wire around the sides, staple it into place. I used hardware cloth the first time. This time I'm going to use chicken wire because it's much easier to work with, and there's less chance of the little pieces of the cut wire sticking up out of the ground to get you in the foot. I'm still just using those 1-inch staples. They worked pretty well. I haven't had an issue with it yet. And now I just fill in the ground, fill it back in, and the chicken coop is ready to go. You can see the chickens playing in there already. There's a lot more room. They're happy. They're especially happy with the more area on the bottom for them to run around and play in the dirt, and the larger nesting bar that I built across there. They really like it. I've gone out there and seen them all across the bar at once, so they're pretty happy with that. So the next thing I got to do is build a small nesting bar to go inside the new box, and also a watering canister and a feeder. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and you have yourself a blessed day.